Hey guys, tonight we unfurl a pirate flag in the moonlight, the fabric crackling just slightly in your hands, almost stiff from the heat it's endured. You run your fingers across the black canvas, noticing how smooth it feels. No wrinkles, no rumples, just a clean, ominous sheet of fear. And yes, we're talking about pirates. Not just the swashbuckling, rum-sloshing kind from movies, but the real ones from the 18th century. And we're zooming in on something you probably never expected. Why they iron their flags. Yep, ironed. Welcome to the high seas, where danger lurks behind every cresting wave, and even your flag needs to look its absolute best. Because when you're about to threaten a merchant ship into surrender, presentation matters. A sloppy flag, that's amateur hour. A crisp, fluttering skull and crossbones, that's showtime. The thing is, ironing a flag on a creaky wooden ship filled with gunpowder, damp rope, and a few too many rats wasn't exactly easy, or safe, or particularly sane, but it happened. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and while you're at it, drop your location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step softly across the creaking deck. It's just before dawn, the sky still velvet black, the stars giving way to a faint orange glow. A breeze picks up, tugging at the edges of the Jolly Roger as it's hoisted into place. You watch as another crewman nods and holds it steady while someone below decks finishes heating the iron. Yes, a literal iron. Not electric, of course. This is the 1700s, and your iron is a solid block of metal heated over a flame. You'd think pirates would have better things to do than fuss over flat cloth. But here we are. And this isn't just theatre. Pirates were some of the most image-conscious people on the ocean. They lived and died by reputation. The flag was their brand, their logo, their press release, and their battle cry all rolled into one. A wrinkled flag. That could send the wrong message. Like maybe you're not as ruthless as you claim. Maybe your ship isn't so well kept. Or maybe your cannon's just for show. That's not the kind of doubt you want your prey to have. You can picture it, a merchant ship on the horizon. The pirates approach, closing the distance fast. The flag goes up. If it ripples out clean and bold, the crew of the merchant vessel might just panic enough to surrender without a fight. Less risk, quicker plunder. But if the flag's a crumpled mess, half folded on itself, maybe it looks like the pirates are disorganized, or worse, fake. There were plenty of imposters in those days, after all. Historians still argue whether the practice of ironing flags was widespread or limited to specific crews. Some believe it was more common among the more theatrical captains, those who understood the value of a good scare. Others think it might have been mostly a pre-battle ritual, not an everyday thing. But we know this much: there are written accounts referring to pirates maintaining their flags meticulously, even going so far as to heat them to keep them dry and presentable. That's not something you do unless you're trying to communicate more than just your proximity. And while it sounds almost comical today, pirates, the ultimate rebels, carefully tending to their ominous decor, it was all part of a deadly serious game. You're not just waving a flag. You're projecting power. And like any good performance, the details matter. It's not just about fear either. There's pride involved. Pirates didn't have nations. They didn't have uniforms or official ranks that meant anything beyond their own ship. What they did have was the flag. That was their identity. And when that identity is basically, we're terrifying and unstoppable, well, you want that message ironed into every fiber. Now, about that heat source. You'd think ironing something on a wooden ship full of tar and rope would be, let's say, inadvisable. And you'd be correct. The fire risk was enormous. That's why, when pirates did iron their flags, they often did it in one of two places, either onshore before setting sail, or in the galley, where the cooking fire could be used carefully. The iron wasn't the kind with a cord. Obviously, it was a big, chunky slab of metal, often with a handle, heated in or near the fire. And yeah, it was heavy. You didn't just casually run that over your laundry while watching Netflix. It took effort, planning, and a serious amount of not burning your ship down awareness. Here's where it gets fun. Some accounts mention using sand or hot stones to press fabric. You'd lay the flag flat, place heated sand in a pan, or wrap hot stones in cloth, and press it down. It was a process, and a surprisingly effective one. Not exactly what you picture when you think pirate life, but again, Presentation was everything. And the flag itself, usually a black canvas base, durable, weather-resistant, and easy to find. The design was either painted or appliqued on, using white fabric or bone-colored paint. The skull and crossbones was common, but not the only option. Some pirates used hourglasses, bleeding hearts, swords, or even full skeletons. The more dramatic, the better. But regardless of the symbol, pirates wanted that flag to pop against the sky. Wrinkles dulled the visual. A crease could obscure the skull's jaw, or make the hourglass look like a blob. Not ideal when you're trying to send a message like, "Surrender now," or "Die screaming." Here's a quirky tidbit for you. Some pirate crews were reportedly superstitious about ironing. They believed that a freshly pressed flag carried better luck in battle, a smoother path to bloodless victory. Others thought it was disrespectful to fly a wrinkled flag, as if it dishonored the dead it symbolized. So ironing wasn't just about aesthetics, it was ritual. You're not just smoothing cloth. You're invoking fear, pride, and maybe a little sea magic. So now you're here, watching the last of the steam hiss off the fabric as the final press is made. The flag's ready, black as midnight, smooth as sharkskin and fluttering just right in the wind. You step back and admire it. A piece of cloth, sure, but also a warning, a signature, and a promise. One that says, "We're not just coming for your cargo, we're coming for your story, and you probably won't survive this." You crouch near the galley fire, squinting through the smoke as a crewmate balances a lump of iron on a set of tongs. The iron glows faintly orange at the edges, like the last ember of a dying star. It's heavy, solid, and built for one thing: pressing fabric flat with the force of heat and weight. This isn't your grandma's ironing session. This is pirate practicality, where canvas, char, and charisma collide in one strange but necessary ritual. You reach for the flag, a stiff rectangle of black canvas, folded with care. The cloth is thick, coarse to the touch, and smells faintly of salt and smoke. It's the kind of material that can survive sea spray, cannon smoke, and the occasional sword slash. Pirates didn't use delicate fabrics. This flag is built like armor for the wind. But even armor needs to look sharp. You lay it across a flat wooden surface, a barrel top, in this case, and someone steadies the edges. The iron is passed down, and the pressing begins. Slow, steady, and with just enough pressure to flatten without scorching. You can hear the gentle hiss of steam as moisture trapped in the fibers evaporates. The smell is oddly pleasant, a blend of heat, salt, and old canvas. Like the sea itself is exhaling. The materials used in pirate flags were no accident. Most were made from heavy-duty sailcloth, canvas that could take a beating. White designs were often painted on with lead-based paint or stitched in using lighter-colored fabrics. In some cases, bones were literally used, animal bones ground into powder and mixed with paint to give designs that off-white, deathly hue. It wasn't just a flag, it was a message written in every stitch and stroke. And while the flag's primary job was to terrify, it also needed to last. Pirates weren't sailing into town for fresh supplies every week. They had to make their tools, and their symbols, endure. That meant treating the flag like a valuable piece of equipment, keeping it dry, patching it when torn, and yes, ironing it to keep the message loud and clear. A wrinkled flag could read as sloppy or even damaged. And on the open sea, where signals were everything, clarity mattered. That black flag wasn't just decoration, it was communication. When you raised it, you were saying, "We're pirates. We mean business. Surrender now." If the message got muddled by a badly folded corner or a creased symbol, the whole dynamic could shift. Historians still argue whether pirates truly ironed for aesthetic perfection, or if it was just one of many fabric care techniques to keep the flag operational. Some suggest the heat helped kill mildew or pests that could nest in stored fabric. Others think it was simply about drying it out after storms. But the result was the same: a smoother, more commanding presence when it mattered most. And don't forget, ships in the 18th century were floating billboards. Long before Wi-Fi and radar, visibility mattered. You see a tall sail on the horizon, and you squint to make out the flag. Is it friendly? Is it from your nation? Or is it the black banner of death? If the flag was limp, twisted, or unreadable, that delay in recognition could cost lives, or at least a few cannonballs. The charisma of the flag was part of the pirates' charm offensive. Not the friendly kind, of course. The kind that says, "Drop your goods now, and maybe we won't burn your ship to the waterline." Pirates were masters of psychological warfare. They didn't always want to fight. Fighting was risky. What they wanted was surrender. And for that, they needed drama. Imagine being a merchant sailor, groggy from a night shift, looking out to sea and spotting a sleek ship on the horizon. You call over your mates, the spyglass is passed around, and then bam, that black flag unfurls, perfectly taut, its skull grinning at you without a wrinkle in sight. You'd probably spill your morning gruel. A smooth flag had presence. Gravitas. It was the pirates' power tie, their red carpet entrance, their Instagram filter before such things existed. Pirates didn't hand out business cards. They raised the Jolly Roger. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some pirate crews reportedly competed over who had the best-looking flag. Not just the design, but the condition. There are mentions in obscure journals of pirates boasting about their flags, perfect drape, or impeccable edge. One ship even had a designated flag boy, a younger crew member whose main job was to care for and prepare the flag for display. That included ironing it, folding it just right, and keeping it out of the damp. The care taken with the flag extended beyond simple fear tactics. It became part of pirate culture, a symbol of pride in your ship and your crew. You didn't just raise a flag, you presented it. And like a well-tailored suit, it said everything about who you were. And let's talk about the ironing process itself. When done on board, it was a team effort. One person managed the fire, another the iron, and another handled the cloth. It wasn't something you did mid-battle or during a storm. It was a preparation act, like loading cannons or sharpening cutlasses. The flag had to be ready. Sometimes flags were ironed on shore before a raid. Pirates would dock in secluded coves, haul out their gear, and prep for action. That might include patching sails, cleaning pistols, and yes, smoothing out the flag. A freshly ironed banner was part of the pre-battle ritual. The cloth's sharp lines caught the wind better, flapping with that dramatic snap that made hearts drop. And yet, not every pirate bothered. Some captains flew tattered, dirty flags on purpose, to look even more terrifying. But there was a line. You wanted scary, not sloppy. A flag so wrinkled it couldn't be read. That was just bad branding. And pirates were all about the brand. So you finish the final press, the iron cooling on a stone slab as the flag is folded just so. It will be hoisted at dawn, its message clear. You feel a strange pride in it. Not just because of what it represents, but because you helped make it perfect. There's a quiet satisfaction in smoothing chaos into order, even if the order is one of calculated threat. And as you stow the iron and roll the flag carefully into its chest, you realize this isn't just fabric. It's a performance. One that begins the moment it catches the wind. You rise before the sun, the deck slick with dew and the air heavy with the hush of early morning. The crew moves slowly, like shadows pulling themselves from sleep. Somewhere off the starboard bow, a merchant ship drifts unsuspectingly across the horizon. It's just far enough away to give you time to prepare the show, because that's exactly what this is, a show, a performance, a floating theatre of terror, and the star of the act, your freshly ironed Jolly Roger, folded neatly in its chest, waiting to be hoisted like a curtain before the first act. You carry it to the mainmast with reverence, as if it's not just cloth, but something sacred. And in a way, it is. This flag is the pirate's first strike, the opening scene of a play meant to send shivers down the spines of your audience. And today's audience, a nervous merchant crew who have no idea they've already paid for front row seats. As the flag is hoisted, the wind catches it just right. It snaps open, crisp and proud, the skull and crossbones framed perfectly against the lightening sky. No wrinkles, no folds. Just pure fluttering menace. It's not just about being seen. It's about being understood. The message has to hit instantly. You're outgunned, outclassed, and out of time. Pirates didn't rely only on brute force. They were masters of psychological warfare. A well-raised flag wasn't just a symbol. It was a weapon, and you're wielding it now with the precision of a swordsman. This is what scholars mean when they talk about the theatre of terror. Pirates knew the value of fear, and fear starts with what people see. You don't need to fire a single shot if the enemy's already imagining the worst. Why risk battle when a mere banner can do the job? Historians still argue whether this theatrical approach was universal or only practiced by certain charismatic captains. Some, like Blackbeard, leaned fully into the drama, braiding lit fuses into his beard, surrounding himself with mystique. Others were more straightforward, letting the flag do the talking. But most agree, the flag's presentation mattered. A lot. Now imagine the merchant ship's crew. They spot your vessel. At first, maybe they're not sure who you are. You could be a naval patrol, a friendly trader, but then the black flag unfurls. It's unmistakable, and it's perfect. No tattered edges, no confusing folds. Just a skull grinning down at them, teeth bared, eyes hollow. It's enough to send some sailors into panic. Others freeze. The captain of the merchant ship has a decision to make: fight or flee. But that flag, so bold, so perfectly presented, makes the choice feel obvious. You're not amateurs. You're professionals. And professionals don't leave wrinkles in their work. A smooth flag also told a story. It said, "We've done this before. We've taken ships like yours. We know what we're doing." And that kind of confidence, it's contagious. Or in this case, infectious. It spreads through the enemy crew like a cold wind through damp sails. Here's a quirky little detail. Some pirate ships reportedly carried multiple flags. Not just for deception, but for dramatic effect. They might raise a plain black flag first, then switch to one with a skeleton or bleeding heart once they were closer. Like changing acts mid-play. And yes, each of these flags would be kept as pristine as possible, often ironed before major engagements. And don't underestimate the importance of wind. Flags didn't just hang, they danced. A taut, wrinkle-free flag caught the breeze better, billowing out in full display. A wrinkled one might sag or twist, turning into a black blob, not exactly inspiring fear. Pirates used every tool available to amplify their image. Loud drum beats, war cries, painted sails, even lighting tricks using lanterns. But the flag was the first and most important cue. A signal that said, "It's already too late." And the enemy knew it. Many would drop anchor and surrender without a shot. They'd seen what happened to those who resisted. They'd heard the stories. Sometimes, the mere sight of the flag was enough to trigger that fight or flight response, and most chose flight. Or tried to. Of course, not every flag worked perfectly. There are accounts of flags getting tangled, or falling limp, in dead wind. One infamous tale describes a pirate crew trying to raise their flag mid-chase, only to have it twist around the mast in a sad little knot. The merchant ship escaped, purely because the pirates couldn't complete their opening act. It was like forgetting your lines on stage, embarrassing and potentially costly. That's why prep mattered. A well-pressed flag avoided such mishaps. It unfurled smoothly, held its shape, and delivered its message instantly. It was the difference between a full house and a walkout. And in case you're wondering, yes, pirates talked about this stuff. They weren't just brutes with swords. They were savvy, clever, and often deeply theatrical. Captains would discuss the timing of the flag raise, the angle of approach, even how to position the sails for maximum visual impact. It was choreography, not chaos. One pirate, a lesser-known but highly effective captain named Silken Sam, was infamous for his obsession with appearance. His crew's uniforms were coordinated. His ship was painted black with gold trim, and his flag, always freshly ironed, folded in a specific way and raised at the perfect moment. Sam's reputation grew not just from victories, but from presentation. He knew that fear begins in the eyes. And here's where things get really theatrical. Some pirates reportedly added small weights to the edges of their flags, tiny lead beads sewn into the hem, to help them unfurl evenly and stay crisp in erratic wind. An ironed flag with weighted edges. That's a professional-grade terror tool. You watch now as the merchant ship slows. Their flag drops, a sign of surrender. No shots fired, no blood spilled, just the power of presentation. The crew cheers softly, not too loud. The real work is still ahead. But you look up at that perfect flag and smile. Because deep down, you know the truth. It wasn't just the cannons or the cutlasses that won this fight. It was the theatre. The atmosphere. The image of a crew so precise that even their death flag is wrinkle-free. You're leaning against the railing now, watching your fellow pirates row over to the surrendered merchant ship. No blood, no chase, no messy squabbles over cannonballs. Just a clean handover of goods, a few pale-faced sailors, and the echo of your flag snapping in the breeze. Easy, efficient, terrifying. And that's the point. You've just seen how a well-presented flag can do what brute force sometimes can't. Because in the 18th century, pirates weren't just thugs with boats. They were brand managers before that was even a thing. They knew they needed to stand out, to build a reputation that spread faster than their ships could sail. And the Jolly Roger, that was the brand's logo. The ironed, iconic, unmistakable symbol of their entire business model. You probably never thought of pirates as being worried about personal branding. But oh, they were. Not in the click my link in bio sense, but in the make sure the next 10 ships we see surrender without a fight sense. And a clean, fearsome flag was central to that strategy. Most pirate crews didn't have the resources to fight every ship they saw. Ammunition was limited, ships needed repairs, and injured crew members were hard to replace. The best case scenario was always to scare people into surrendering, and that meant reputation. You wanted your name whispered in every port tavern, your ship described with wide eyes and shaking tankards. You wanted sailors to say, "If you see a black flag smooth as glass with a skeleton holding a bleeding heart, just drop anchor and pray." And it worked. Reputation was a pirate's most valuable currency, and like any good brand, consistency was key. A clean ironed flag told people, "We're the real deal. We're not some desperate privateers throwing together a flag with charcoal and an old bedsheet. We take this seriously. We are professionals in the business of fear." Historians still argue whether pirate branding was deliberate or just a natural evolution of seafaring culture. Did they consciously craft these identities, or did it grow organically as stories spread? Some believe captains like Calico Jack, Rackham, and Black Bart Roberts carefully designed their flags and personas to maximize impact. Others believe the myth-making came later, exaggerated by sailors and writers who just loved a good story. But what's clear is this: pirates leaned into it. Take Blackbeard, for example. He wasn't the most successful pirate in terms of loot, but his image, fused beard fuses, billowing smoke, towering frame, was pure performance art. His flag, a skeletal devil holding an hourglass and a spear, pointing at a bleeding heart. Dramatic, absolutely. Effective, you bet. And you can bet he didn't hang that flag up in a crumpled mess. Pirate branding wasn't just visual, either. It extended to ship names, battle cries, even clothing. A pirate who looked the part, dark coat, flashy hat, maybe a sash or two, wasn't just dressing up for fun. He was feeding the legend. And the flag was the centerpiece of that legend. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some pirates reportedly gave their flags names. Like a pet or a prized weapon, the flag was named, spoken of with reverence, and given its own place in the ship's lore. One crew reportedly called theirs the Widow's Smile. Another simply referred to it as hair, as in, rise her, or keep her dry. You don't name something unless it matters. And let's not forget pirates had to compete. Not just with Navy ships or merchant guards, but with other pirates. If your flag looked like a poorly drawn doodle on a wrinkly rag, good luck getting the same respect as the captain flying a pristine, ironed banner with dramatic bones and a reputation to match. In pirate society, status mattered, and your flag was your calling card. That's why ironing wasn't just about function. It was about flair. It was about walking into the metaphorical room and making everyone stop talking. A flag that looked sharp said, "We care enough to scare you properly." It meant you were organized, proud, and maybe just unhinged enough to make surrender the best option. Pirates also had to think about their customer experience. And yes, we're using that term. A merchant ship's crew that surrendered without a fight might be spared, even treated decently, especially if they cooperated. But if they resisted, things could get ugly. So pirates needed that first impression to be strong enough to prevent resistance in the first place. A crisp flag sent the message, "We've done this before, and we'll do it again. Save yourself the trouble." And the story spread. Sailors talked. Port towns buzzed with rumor. "Did you hear about the ship that was taken without a shot? Just saw the flag and gave up." That's the kind of publicity you can't buy, but you can iron for. Of course, not every pirate had the same approach. Some leaned into chaos, torn flags, wild hair, screaming lunatics on deck. But even that was branding. It was a choice, a strategy. And many of those so-called chaotic ships still cared deeply about how their symbols looked to others. There's even some evidence that pirates used different flag designs for different purposes. One for intimidation, one for deception, one for formal declarations. Some hoisted a plain red flag, the infamous no quarter signal, only after giving a ship the chance to surrender. Others used fake flags of friendly nations, only dropping them at the last moment to reveal the Jolly Roger. And each of those flags needed to be ready. Clean, clear, and terrifying. You stand now beneath your own ship's flag, flapping above you like a dark omen. You can see the merchant crew being escorted back to their lifeboat, lighter a few crates but alive. They'll talk. They'll tell the story of the ship with the smooth black flag. And that story will spread. And the next time someone sees your sails on the horizon, maybe they'll remember. Maybe they'll surrender faster. That's pirate branding. It's not a logo on a coffee mug. It's a symbol sharpened by fire, reputation, and just a little bit of steaming cloth. And as you fold the flag again, ready for its next appearance, you can't help but smile. Because out here, even fear has a dress code. You duck below deck now, the scent of brine and old wood wrapping around you like a damp blanket. The galley is quiet, save for the soft clink of metal and the low hiss of a fire being coaxed back to life. You're not here for food, not this time. You're here for the fire. Because as odd as it sounds, the heart of your pirate ship's flag maintenance isn't the sail or the mast or even the lookout. It's the galley. That's where the heat lives. And if you're going to iron a flag aboard a floating tinderbox, you need to do it where the flames are already burning, and the risk of accidental combustion is, well, let's say slightly lower. You crouch near the stove, where the cook, nicknamed Biscuit for reasons no one remembers, gives you a sideways glance and mutters, "Don't set fire to the potatoes." Fair enough. Biscuit's got enough to worry about without someone melting flag canvas over his stew. The iron you're using is a squat, ugly thing. A thick block of metal with a curved handle like a medieval paperweight. You've already wrapped a cloth around the grip. No one wants pirate flag branding in the literal sense. Biscuit shovels hot coals into a small pan, and you nestle the iron in until it starts to glow with a faint reddish hue. Not too hot. You're not trying to torch the flag, just press it. This is the part most people forget when they picture pirates. They imagine cannon fire, treasure maps, and parrots squawking over the chaos. But here you are, babysitting an iron and smoothing wrinkles out of a black cloth like a Victorian housemaid with a vengeance. It's oddly meditative. The repetition, the warmth, the quiet hum of the ship. And yes, it's dangerous. Fire aboard a wooden ship, not ideal. Especially when that ship is soaked in pitch, rope, gunpowder, and dreams of easy plunder. That's why most ironing was done with extreme caution. Or, when possible, on land. Historians still argue whether pirates actually ironed regularly at sea, or if this was more of a portside preparation ritual. Some point to logs and journals that mention flag tending or banner readying as evidence that heat-based methods were used on board. Others suggest ironing was rare, reserved for big events, major attacks, parley meetings, or appearances in pirate-friendly towns where reputation needed to be at its sharpest. But when you had to do it on the ship, you got creative. Pirates knew how to make do. Sometimes they used heated stones instead of metal irons. Flatter ones, wrapped in cloth and pressed gently against the fabric. Other times, they'd hang the flag near the galley fire, letting the steam and warmth do the work slowly over hours. Not perfect, but serviceable and safer. There's even a fringe theory. Yes, one of those delightful, are we sure, pirate scholar debates, that some ships had a designated heat press box. Basically, a wooden compartment with a flat stone inside, heated with coals, used for pressing garments and flags. Was it common? Probably not. But it's the kind of detail pirate nerds are like us live for. Here's a quirky tidbit. Pirates weren't above using unconventional sources of heat. There are whispered stories of a captain who used the cover of a cannon barrel to press his flag, wrapping the hot metal in a damp cloth and laying the flag across it. Risky? Extremely. But hey, if you're already handling gunpowder and sharp objects daily, maybe a little fabric singeing isn't that wild. Of course, all of this had to be done while managing the rhythm of life aboard the ship. You couldn't just take over the galley for hours. That's where food happened. That's where warmth lived. So flag ironing had to be efficient, planned and, above all, discreet. You didn't want to be the one who smoked out the hold because you got too enthusiastic with a hot iron. Some crews even had a schedule for it. Not formal, not written down, but understood. Flags were maintained during calm seas before landfall, or after a big haul when morale was high and the crew had time to breathe. It became part of the ship's ritual, like scraping barnacles or mending sails, a detail in the dance of pirate life. And who did the ironing? That's the fun part. It wasn't always the captain, though some, especially the more image-obsessed ones, liked to oversee the process. More often, it fell to the quartermaster, the sailmaker, or even the ship's cook when time allowed. Because cooks, after all, knew heat best. There's a story, maybe apocryphal, maybe not, of a pirate crew that lost their flag during a storm. Torn, soaked, unusable. They made a new one, stitching by lantern light, and ironed it using a skillet heated over the galley flame. They finished just in time to raise it at dawn as they cornered a Portuguese merchant ship. The merchant captain took one look at the fresh, clean flag and surrendered before the pirates even hailed them. That's the power of preparation. But let's not romanticize it too much. Ironing a flag at sea was still a pain. The ship rocked. The iron slipped. You risked scorching the fabric or worse, starting a fire. That's why some pirates preferred to roll their flags instead of folding them. Less creasing, faster deployment, and no need for last-minute heat work. But even then, after a long voyage, the flag could get bunched or warped. And so, back to the galley you'd go. It makes you think, doesn't it, about the irony of it all. These were men and some women who lived outside the law, defied kings, and plundered with impunity. Yet here they were, carefully pressing a flag to make sure it looked just right. It's the kind of contradiction that makes history delicious. You lift the iron now, testing it against a scrap of cloth before applying it to the real thing. The flag lies flat across a wooden board scavenged from an old crate. You press slowly, watching the steam curl upward. It smells like salt and smoke and just a hint of something floral. Someone must have laundered this with herbs. Pirates. Always full of surprises. The flag is finished in under 20 minutes. You hold it up, admiring the way it falls. Smooth, clean, ready. You fold it with care, once, twice. Then into a tight rectangle, and return it to its chest. Another performance waiting in the wings. Because whether you're raiding a ship, parleying with a rival, or just sailing into a pirate haven, you want that flag to say something before you say a word. You're on laundry duty today, not glamorous, not heroic, but strangely satisfying. You're elbow deep in seawater and lye soap, scrubbing shirts that haven't seen a proper wash since the last port. And as you wring out a pair of trousers that could probably walk on their own, you start thinking about something odd. For a group of people famous for being filthy, pirates were surprisingly picky about certain kinds of cleanliness. Not all of them, of course. You'll still find the occasional swab with a bread crust in his beard and a sock that doubles as a pillow. But when it came to cloth, especially flags and clothing that mattered, they had standards. And yes, that included ironing. Not just for the Jolly Roger, but sometimes for their own clothes too. You blink at that, right? Pirates with press breeches. Sounds like a joke, but it's not as far-fetched as it seems. You see, in the 18th century, most sailors, pirate or naval, were filthy by necessity, not by choice. Fresh water was limited. Laundry could only be done when the weather was right, and the ship wasn't in the middle of a chase or cannon duel. But when pirates did get the chance to clean up, they often went the extra mile, especially if they were nearing a port, preparing for a negotiation, or expecting to show some flair before an attack. Historians still argue whether this was vanity, practicality, or a mix of both. Some accounts describe pirates as slovenly and wild-looking, while others paint a picture of surprisingly well-groomed crews, especially under captains who valued presentation. Some even had rules about it. Black Bart Roberts, for example, was famously strict. His men had to dress neat and clean, even at sea. He reportedly wore a crimson waistcoat into battle and expected his crew to keep their own outfits in decent shape. So yes, there was a cult of cleanliness. Not everywhere, not always, but in just enough places to raise eyebrows. And it extended to more than just hygiene. Pirates were theatrical. They cared about how things looked. They didn't wear uniforms, but they had a sense of occasion. An pressed shirt or a clean sash sent a message, just like a smooth, fearsome flag. That's where ironing came in. Sure, it was mostly reserved for flags and battle gear, but if the iron was hot and the day was calm, why not run it over a coat or shirt? Some crews had a communal iron, kept in the galley or sail room, and anyone could use it when the fire was going. It wasn't about looking fancy. It was about looking sharp. Here's a quirky tidbit some pirates considered a wrinkled shirt bad luck. There's a story of a sailor who refused to set foot on deck during a raid because he couldn't get the creases out of his cuffs. Superstitious. Definitely. But imagine how deeply that belief must have been rooted for someone to risk punishment, or missing out on plunder, just to avoid tempting fate with a crumpled sleeve. And let's not forget the social aspect. Pirates weren't just brutes. They were part of a floating society. And like any society, they had hierarchies, customs, and expectations. If your captain dressed well, you wanted to keep up. If your ship had a reputation for being the clean crew, you didn't want to be the one dragging it down. Even pirates had peer pressure. Clothing also played a role in identity. You weren't just a sailor, you were a pirate. That meant something. You might not have a uniform, but you had a look, a vibe. And like any good vibe, it needed a little maintenance. A pressed sash here, a smoothed collar there. Small things, but they added up. And it wasn't just about looking good for your enemies. It was about morale. Life at sea was brutal. If you could have one moment of control, one small victory over the chaos, it helped. Ironing a shirt or a flag, or even just folding something neatly, it gave pirates a sense of order in an otherwise lawless world. Of course, not everyone bought into this. Some pirates wore their grime like a badge of honor. The dirtier, the deadlier, one old saying goes. And sure, there were captains who didn't care if their crew looked like they just crawled out of a cannon. But even then, the flag was different. The flag had to be clean. Always. That's because the flag wasn't just a tool, it was a ritual object. Treated with reverence, kept in a dry place. Sometimes even oiled or perfumed, if you can believe it. One pirate journal mentions a crew that stored their flag wrapped in oiled cloth and lavender sprigs, so it would unfurl with a dramatic scent. Did it intimidate enemies? Who knows, but it sure made an impression, and ironing was part of that care. You didn't just toss the flag in a pile, you prepared it, smoothed it, sometimes even stitched charms or small bones into the corners for luck. It was part of the ship's soul, and whether or not you ironed your socks, you always ironed the Jolly Roger. Now, back on deck, you hang the laundry on a line strung between the mast and the rigging. Shirts flap like surrender flags, pants dance awkwardly in the breeze. The crew laughs, calling out to one another, teasing the guy whose drawers are still stained from last week's storm. But there's pride in it, too. Clean clothes, dry sails, a ship that feels like home. And when the laundry's done, and the last shirt is folded, you take the flag from its chest. One last check. No creases, no folds. Just a smooth, ominous sheet of black. It's funny, isn't it? How something as mundane as ironing, something your mom might nag you about, could become an act of power, pride, and superstition aboard a pirate ship. But here you are, one more sailor in a long line of rogue aesthetes, making sure the symbol of your rebellion is wrinkle-free. Because even pirates need a little polish. You're standing near the mast again, the flag slung over your shoulder like some sacred relic. The sea is calm today, too calm, maybe, and the wind is just strong enough to tease the sails. You look skyward and watch the rigging sway gently, the ropes creaking like old bones. It's almost time to raise the flag. But not just yet. Because here's the thing, when you're a pirate, timing is everything. Not just when you fire your cannons or swing from a rope, but when you raise your flag. And not just when, but how. That cloth in your hands isn't just a floating threat. It's part of a secret language, a code written not in words but in fabric, motion, and wind. Pirates didn't just use flags to scare people. They used them to communicate. Sometimes with enemies, sometimes with allies, and sometimes with each other. That's where the condition of the flag, smoothed, crisp, clean, made an unexpected difference. Because believe it or not, a wrinkled flag could spell disaster. You glance up again, testing the breeze. Too little wind, and the flag will droop. No drama, no fear. Too much, and it could wrap around the mast or snap so violently it tears. But the real danger? Misinterpretation. A wrinkle in the fabric could obscure a skull's grin, hide a sword in shadow, or worse, make a signal look like something it's not. Historians still argue whether pirate flags were truly used as coded signals, or if that's just a romantic overlay added later. But there are credible accounts of pirates using subtle differences in flag placement, condition, and timing to send messages. Lowering a flag halfway might signal surrender, or a trap. Rising it slowly versus snapping it up fast, a sign of caution or aggression. And if your flag's too creased to be legible, well, now everyone's guessing. And on the high seas, guessing gets people killed. You've heard the stories. One crew mistook a wrinkled red flag for a black one and thought they were being offered mercy. They didn't resist. The pirates boarded and, let's just say, it didn't end in hugs. Another ship raised a black flag in perfect condition, but the hourglass symbol was folded just enough to look like a cross. The merchant crew thought it was a religious emblem, possibly Spanish, and tried to parley. That flag never got ironed again. So yes, pirates iron their flags not just for the fear factor, but for clarity, for precision. For the same reason you wouldn't send a smoke signal on a windy day, or write a letter in smudged ink. A flag was a message, and every wrinkle was a potential miscommunication. There's a quirky tidbit here: some pirate crews actually practiced flag drills, like a high seas semaphore team. They'd raise different flags in rehearsal, test how they looked in varying wind conditions, and adjust accordingly. One log from a merchant ship describes seeing a pirate vessel lower and raise the same rag thrice, each time with different flourish. That wasn't just flair, that was communication. And while not all pirates were so meticulous, those who had an edge. You didn't have radios, no flares. Flags were your best bet for saying, "Attack now," or "Wet," or "We've got company." And when you're relying on black canvas and bone-colored symbols to say everything, you want to make sure those bones are visible. That's why some flags had bold, simple designs: big skulls, thick crossbones, massive hourglasses. The kind of imagery that could be recognized from a distance, even if the wind wasn't cooperating. But even the boldest design can vanish into a crease. A poorly folded corner can turn a grinning skull into a confused potato, and no one fears a confused potato. So, pirates ironed, they smoothed, they tested. They sometimes waited for just the right wind before hoisting their flag. Because raising a wrinkled flag wasn't just bad form, it was bad tactics. Some captains even kept multiple versions of the same flag. One for calm days, one for strong winds, and one for those dramatic, stormy moments when the sky turned black and the sea boiled like a cauldron. Each one ironed, folded, and stored with care. Because you never knew when you'd need it. You reach into the flag chest now and pull out a second flag. This one with slightly different stitching. It's the silent flag, as the crew calls it. No skull, no bones. Just black. It's used when stealth matters, or when you want to spook someone just a little before showing your full hand. It's smooth, heavy, and lined with tiny lead beads along the bottom hem. They help it unfurl properly, even in uncertain wind. It's a strange thing, isn't it? That pirates, those rough, lawless figures of the sea, cared so deeply about the physics of fabric. But when you live and die by signs and signals, every detail matters. A flag that flutters wrong can cost you a ship. A flag that flutters right, it can win you a battle before it begins. You think about the weight of that. How many fights were won not by cannon or sword, but by cloth? How many merchant captains spotted a symbol in the distance, perfectly clear, perfectly terrifying, and decided, right then and there, not to risk it? How many pirates coordinated without a word, trusting that their ironed flag would say what needed to be said? And it wasn't just about war. Pirates used flags in port too, to signal alliances, to bluff their way into restricted harbors, to pretend they were merchant ships from far-off lands. A wrinkled flag could give you away, but a smooth one, that was a mask. You hoist the flag now, watching it rise. It catches the breeze and floats out, smooth and ominous. No confusion, no ambiguity, just a looming black shape that says exactly what it means. The crew falls silent for a moment, watching it, not out of fear but respect. For the flag, for what it represents, for the strange little ritual of heat and cloth and clarity that makes it all possible. Because in the world of 18th century piracy, every ripple in the fabric mattered. And you've just made sure the message is clear. You duck into the captain's quarters, brushing aside the thick velvet curtain strung up to block out the sunlight. It's cooler in here, dimmer too, and smells faintly of pipe smoke, varnish, and something you can't quite place. Maybe clove oil, maybe just the scent of old wood and secrets. The walls are lined with maps, half-finished letters, and a few stolen paintings that definitely don't match the rest of the decor. But what draws your attention isn't the desk or the charts. It's the chest. Not the one filled with coins or pistols or rum, but the one tucked beneath the captain's bed, square, reinforced, and with a lock that's seen more open seas than most sailors. This is the flag chest. And what's inside it is more precious than gold. The Jolly Rogers, neatly folded, ironed, and ready for whatever performance the day demands. You kneel beside it and lift the lid. Inside, nestled in linen wrappings like holy relics, are 3 flags. The main one, the skull and crossbones, sits on top, its canvas still faintly warm from its most recent pressing. Beneath it, a red flag, the dreaded "No Quarter" warning, and a third, smaller black banner with a stylized hourglass stitched in white thread. Each of them is folded with care, seams aligned, corners sharp. There are little sachets tucked between the folds, lavender, maybe, or a blend of herbs meant to keep moisture and moths away. You smile. Even pirates cared about fabric preservation. You run your fingers along the edge of the top flag. Smooth, taut, not a single crinkle. It's been ironed recently, probably yesterday, and whoever did it knew what they were doing. The canvas is thick, but still bends cleanly without cracking. The iron must have been just the right temperature, hot enough to press, not so hot as to scorch. This chest is part of something bigger than just storage. It's a ritual space, a miniature wardrobe for the ship's theatrical soul. And like any good dressing room, it's meticulously maintained. There's a small brush for dusting off flags, a bone-handled tool for smoothing seams, and even a little bottle of oil, likely used to treat the iron, or possibly the fabric itself. Historians still argue whether all pirate captains kept such organized spaces for their flags, or if this was a quirk limited to the more dramatic types. Some suggest only higher-ranking ships with seasoned crews could afford this level of care. Others believe it was more common than we think. Just one of those everyday maritime habits that didn't make it into the more sensationalized logs. After all, who's going to write, "Today we ironed the flag again," when they could be boasting about cannon fire and treasure? Still, there's enough anecdotal evidence to suggest many pirates took their flag management seriously. When you don't have a national banner or a navy uniform, your flag is your identity. And the captain's quarters. That's where identity is curated. You peek under the flags and find a few more items. A leather-bound book with sketches of alternate designs, some more gruesome than others. A spare iron wrapped in cloth, and a sealed envelope labeled, "For port use only." Probably a fake merchant flag or a letter of marque, forged and ready to be waved around when needed. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some pirate captains were known to change their flags depending on mood or mission. Just like someone switching from a hoodie to a blazer before a big meeting. Going into a serious battle, raise the red flag, trying to bluff your way past a British patrol. Hoist a wrinkled Union Jack and pretend your ship's name is the Buttercup. But for those moments where drama mattered, when fear needed to bloom in someone else's gut, you always went back to the Jolly Roger, and always ironed. You lift the hourglass flag, holding it up to the low lantern light. The stitches are intricate, but functional. The cloth has been reinforced at the corners, and the edges are weighted just slightly, probably with tiny lead pellets sewn into the hem. It's clear someone on this ship knew their fabric, maybe even came from a tailoring background before they took to piracy. It wouldn't be the first time. Pirate crews were a mishmash of skills. Sailors, ex-naval officers, escaped convicts, disgraced nobles, and yes, occasionally, tailors. And when you're living on a ship where every item has to earn its keep, someone with needle and thread know-how becomes just as valuable as the guy who can load a cannon in 10 seconds flat. One crew reportedly had a designated cloth master, a role somewhere between fashion consultant and battle planner, whose job it was to maintain the sails, uniforms, and flags. That included cleaning, folding, repairing, and yes, ironing. The cloth master didn't fight, but he helped win battles just the same. You refold the hourglass flag and place it back gently. Beneath it, tucked into the corner of the chest, is a strip of parchment, a checklist of sorts. You squint at the handwriting. Red flag pressed, oiled main Roger folded, no damage hourglass edge weights intact iron cooled. Stored firebox cleaned. It's like a backstage prep list for a Broadway show, except instead of applause, you're aiming for panic and plunder. You close the chest softly, almost reverently. It's strange, isn't it? This quiet order beneath all the chaos. You'd expect the captain's quarters to be full of empty bottles and maps scrawled in blood. But instead, here lies the evidence of care, curation, and a deep understanding of the power of symbols. Because when the sails rise and the drums beat and the wind catches just right, that flag won't be just a piece of cloth. It'll be the message, a story told without a single word. And the fact that it's been ironed, folded, stored, and treated with such respect. That's what makes it effective. You step back out onto the deck, the sun higher now, the sea glittering like a field of coins. The flag is already up, someone's raised it while you were gone, and it flutters cleanly, no creases, no folds. Just a smooth sheet of dread. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most pirate thing of all. Not the sword fights, not the stolen gold, but the quiet, obsessive attention to the one thing everyone will see before they even see you. The wind's picking up as you make your way toward the bow, the flag behind you snapping with that signature crack. A sound that turns heads and tightens stomachs. You glance back over your shoulder. There it is, the Jolly Roger, high and proud, fluttering like a black-winged bird of prey. It's hard to believe that this one's simple design, two bones crossed beneath a skull, would grow into one of the most recognized symbols in the world. But it didn't start that way. You rest your elbows on the railing, listening to the creak of the ship and the low murmur of the crew behind you. You start to think about where it all began. The flag, the symbol, the idea that pirates of all people needed a logo. Historians still argue about the exact origins of the Jolly Roger. Some say it evolved from naval flags used to signal no quarter, a warning that no mercy would be given. Others trace it back to privateers, state-sanctioned pirates, who flew red or black flags to distinguish themselves from national navies. But one thing's clear, by the early 18th century, the black flag had become a kind of pirate shorthand, and ironing it. That was just one more way of keeping the message sharp. The name, Jolly Roger, itself is a mystery wrapped in sea mist. Some believe it's a corruption of the French Jolly Rouge, or Pretty Red, referring to the red flag of no quarter. Others think it's a reference to Old Roger, a nickname for the devil. Either way, by the time the flag became iconic, it was already steeped in layers of fear and folklore, and the designs. They were far from uniform at first. Sure, the skull and crossbones became the most famous version, but many pirates used variations to reflect their own personalities, or, let's be honest, their flair for the dramatic. You saw skeletons holding hourglasses, bleeding hearts, swords, even dancing figures. Some flags featured whole skeletons stabbing hearts or raising goblets, as if to say, time's up, drink up, you're done. You picture it, Captain Edward England's flag, just a skull above crossed bones, simple and clean. Or Bartholomew Roberts, who had two versions, one showing him standing on a pair of skulls, the other featuring a skeleton toasting death. These weren't just doodles, they were statements, battle banners with personality. And they required care. The more intricate the design, the more attention needed to preserve it. Paint cracked, stitches frayed, canvas warped in the sun or curled when damp. That's where ironing came in, not just for terror, but for preservation. A smooth flag meant the symbols stayed recognizable. A wrinkled one, it might hide the details, blur the message, or look amateurish. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. Some pirates reportedly retired their flags after a particularly successful raid, or particularly bloody one. They'd store them in chests, never to fly again, believing the flag had done its duty. A few even claimed the flag had become cursed after too much death. Superstition or sentimentality, who knows? But imagine a crisp, ironed flag folded away, never again to ride the wind, now just a relic of one perfect, terrifying moment. And yet, even with all these variations, the skull and crossbones endured. It was bold, memorable, and easy to paint or stitch. It worked from a distance. It didn't need explanation. That's the mark of a perfect symbol. And pirates, whether they realized it or not, had created a brand that would outlive them all. You walk past a crewman now, who's sitting cross-legged on the deck, patching a section of sailcloth. He's humming to himself, needle moving in rhythmic precision. You wonder how many pirates doubled as artists, how many stitched their own flags or painted them by lantern light. How many took pride not just in what the flag meant, but in how it looked. Some pirates were known to repaint their flags between raids, not just to restore faded designs, but to improve them, add detail, sharpen the skull's grin, thicken the bones, and always iron them afterward, because a freshly painted flag that folds poorly, disaster. The paint cracks, the canvas buckles, the whole thing looks sloppy, and sloppy doesn't scare anyone. There's something poetic about that, isn't there? These were men and women who lived by no one's rules but their own, yet they still obeyed the laws of aesthetics. They still respected the power of presentation. A flag wasn't just a signal, it was a stage. And like any good stage, it needed to be clean, dramatic, and lit just right. You think back to the flag chest in the captain's quarters, the sketches, the careful folding, the sachets of herbs. That's not just maintenance, that's reverence. That's understanding that, in this brutal world, fear is currency, and a flag, when done right, is the most valuable coin in your treasury. And it's not just pirates who recognized this. Merchant ships, too, began to copy the style, sometimes to bluff their way out of danger, sometimes to confuse actual pirates. There are reports of British Navy captains who flew black flags to trick enemies. It was a game of visual poker, and the best players knew how to iron their cards. You reach the prow of the ship now, watching the horizon. A speck appears, another sail, distant but growing. The crew stirs, but there's no panic. Not yet. Someone will fetch the flag. Not the one flying now, but maybe the red one. Maybe something new. And whoever pulls it from the chest will unfold it with care. They'll check it for creases. They might even run a warm stone over it if there's time. Because when that flag rises, it has to tell the right story. And that story, centuries later, still echoes. The Jolly Roger has become more than a pirate symbol. It's a shorthand for danger, rebellion, anti-authority cool. It's on lunch boxes and bandanas, tattoos and cartoons. But back then, it was deadly serious. And every line, every bone, every perfectly pressed fold mattered. So when you see it now, flapping in the wind, smooth as glass, skull grinning, know this: it didn't just happen. That flag was made, maintained, and ironed into legend. You're back on deck, leaning against the railing, watching the sea roll by like an endless stretch of wrinkled blue fabric. It makes you think, fittingly, about cloth again, about the flag tucked away in its chest, smooth and silent for now. But you know what's coming. The crew knows. The captain knows. There's a raid on the horizon. And before that, there's a ritual. It starts quiet. No shouting, no barking orders. Just movement, deliberate and practiced. One pirate heads to the galley to check the iron. Another goes below to fetch the flag. You trail behind, drawn by the rhythm of it all. There's something sacred in the air, not religious but ceremonial. Like preparing a stage, or dressing for a funeral. A very loud, very one-sided funeral. This isn't superstition, not entirely, it's preparation. Pirates didn't always have time to ready themselves before battle, but when they did, they made it count. And the act of ironing the flag, that was the centerpiece. You follow the quartermaster into the captain's quarters, where the chest is already open. The flag is there, folded like a sacred scroll. The quartermaster doesn't speak, just lifts it, unfolds it with a reverence you wouldn't expect from a man who once bit someone's ear off in a tavern brawl. He lays it out on a clean cloth, smooth and dark, showing off the designer skeleton holding a spear, standing next to an hourglass. Classic, creepy, effective. Then comes the iron. Still warm from the galley, it's wrapped in cloth to prevent scorching. It's not fancy, just a block of metal with a handle. But in this moment, it might as well be a holy relic. The quartermaster presses it gently along the edges of the flag, smoothing out the smallest creases. He doesn't rush. No one speaks. The fire crackles, and the ship creaks, and the scent of warm canvas fills the room. You can't help but marvel at the contrast. Here's a crew of thieves, brawlers, and outlaws, treating a piece of fabric like it's spun from gold. But it's not about the material, it's about what it means. That flag is about to be the first thing a merchant crew sees. The first sign that death is closing in, and it has to be perfect. Historians still argue whether these rituals were common or just practiced by a few particular captains. Some say it was more about practicality, keeping the flag dry, legible, and ready. Others believe it became something more, a moment of calm, of focus before chaos, like an athlete tying their shoes just right before a game, or a samurai sharpening their blade not just to fight, but to center themselves. And it wasn't just the flag that got attention. Some crews had an entire pre-battle routine. Clothes were adjusted, weapons were checked, hair tied back, and the flag ironed, folded, and raised with ceremony. One journal describes a pirate crew that circled their flag 3 times before hoisting it, chanting softly, eyes fixed on the sky. Another crew supposedly lit a candle beside the flag chest before every raid, letting it burn down before they struck. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some pirates believed ironing the flag sealed their luck. If the iron hissed when it touched the cloth, it meant the raid would go smoothly. If it didn't, well, maybe they'd think twice. Not that they'd cancel the raid, but you might want to double-check your powder stores. You watch as the flag is finished, folded again, and handed to the captain. He doesn't smile, doesn't speak, just nods once and tucks it under his arm like a priest carrying a relic. Then he heads topside, and the crew follows. Back on deck, the ship is eerily calm, sails billow gently. The crew stands in loose formation. No one's yelling, no one's bragging. Everyone's just waiting. The merchant ship is still a dot on the horizon, but it's getting closer. And soon, very soon, the flag will go up. The captain steps to the mast and unwraps the flag. With practiced hands, he ties it to the halyard. He glances at the wind, at the approaching ship, and then he raises his hand. Time seems to slow. The crew holds its breath, and then up it goes. The Jolly Roger rises, smooth as a sheet of black ice. No ripples, no folds. It unfurls like a curtain, the skeleton now fully visible, spear pointed straight ahead, hourglass tilted just so. The merchant ship will see it soon. And when they do, they'll know exactly what it means. That's the power of ritual, of ironing, of treating a symbol like it matters. Because it does matter. Not just to the people who see it, but to the people who raise it. You hear a crewman near you whisper, "Now it begins." He's not smiling, he's not bluffing. This isn't a game. This is the moment the performance starts. And it's not just about fear. It's about pride, unity, control. In a world where so much is unpredictable, weather, wind, rival ships, this flag is one thing you can control. You can fold it, you can press it. You can raise it when you're ready, not a moment before. You think about that iron, still warm in the galley. About the hands that held it, the care that went into every press. And you realize this ritual isn't just about showmanship, it's about intention, about focus, about saying, we may be outlaws, but we're not sloppy. Because there's something deeply unnerving about pirates who take their time, who don't rush, who iron their symbols of death like it's a sacred duty. And as the wind gusts and the flag flutters just right, you realize this isn't just a banner. It's a prophecy. You step off the ship and into the heat of a Caribbean port town. The boards beneath your boots still damp from the tide. The air here smells of salt, citrus, and 1,000 unwashed bodies, all crammed into the marketplace shouting about pineapples, parrots, and pots. But you're not here for fruit or souvenirs. You're here for something much rarer, fabric expertise. Because while pirates may have done their own ironing at sea, there was a secret behind the scenes, often overlooked, mostly unsung. And if you follow the trail far enough, through winding alleys and backroom doors, you'll find them, the women who kept pirate cloth in shape. The washerwomen, seamstresses, and shoreside flag maintainers who made sure that when a black flag rose, it rose sharp. You duck into the shade of a stone building, the door creaking as you enter. Inside, steam, lines of drying fabric, the sound of water sloshing in buckets, and in the corner, a woman with rolled up sleeves and a face like she's seen every kind of trouble you could name. She's pressing a flag with a hot iron, her hands moving with the kind of precision that only comes from repetition. And maybe a little spite. She doesn't look up as you approach. "Don't touch the canvas," she mutters. "Still hot." You nod and look around. There are more flags here, some folded, some pinned to drying racks, others laid flat on tables. There's a red one with a jagged edge, a black one with a stitched skeleton, and a few plain ones freshly laundered and waiting for their gruesome upgrades. This is a pirate laundry. Not officially, of course. On paper, it's just a clothworks. But ask around, and you'll learn that this shop services more than just merchant crews and fancy captains. Pirates come here between raids, paying in gold or stolen spices to have their flags cleaned, dried, and most importantly, ironed. Historians still argue whether pirate ships regularly employed women or if they relied on shoreside contacts like this. Most agree that women were far more involved in pirate logistics than the stories suggest. Sure, they weren't always swinging from rigging or shooting pistols, but they were absolutely laundering the legend. And that included maintaining flags. Some washerwomen knew the designs better than the pirates themselves. They knew which skulls belonged to which captains, which flags carried which curses, and which canvas needed extra starch to hold its shape in a strong wind. You could say they were the brand managers of pirate aesthetics. Here's a quirky tidbit. Certain ports had flag women, who were unofficially affiliated with specific pirate crews. If you were a captain with prides and a little coin, you'd send your flag to one of these women before a big raid. She'd clean it, fix any rips, and iron it so perfectly that it would catch the wind like a blade. One journal entry from a pirate's log reads, "Sent the banner to Eliza. She makes death fly better than any wind." And it wasn't just about beauty. Ironing helped preserve the flag's longevity. These women knew that salt and humidity could ruin canvas fast. They used herbal rinses, oils, and even crushed citrus to fight mold and mildew. Then came the pressing, flatboards, heavy irons, and a skillful eye to avoid scorching the design. You watch now as the woman flips the flag she's working on. The skull stares up at you, one eye narrowed in what can only be described as passive-aggressive menace. She runs the iron along the seam, then stops, lifts it, and inspects the edge with the same care a jeweler might give a diamond. "Captain's coming back in 2 days," she says, mostly to herself. can't be giving him a flag that looks like it's been chewed by goats. The room smells of hot cloth and lemon oil. And you realize something. This is where the drama begins. Not on the ship, not in battle. But here, in a hot little room with irons and boards, and a woman who probably knows more about pirate history than any dusty book ever will. And don't think the pirates didn't respect it. Word was, you crossed your flag, woman, at your peril. One captain, name lost to history, made the mistake of skipping payment. Next time he raised his flag, the skull had been stitched with a tiny, rude gesture in the corner. Took him weeks to notice. By then, the story had spread across 3 islands. Some women even embroidered small charms into the flags, bits of bone, sea glass, or braided hair for luck. Others refused to handle certain flags altogether, claiming they were cursed. One woman in Nassau was known to burn the ironing cloth after working on a specific red flag, saying it brought shadows. You can't help but smile at the seriousness of it all. The rituals, the beliefs, the pride. These women weren't just doing laundry. They were preserving pirate mythology one press at a time. You ask the woman why she still irons flags when she could be making dresses or uniforms for merchant crews. She snorts. Because pirates pay. And they remember who makes him look good. Fair enough. You leave the clothworks and step back into the heat of day. The port is bustling. Sailors shouting, barrels rolling. Gulls screaming overhead. Somewhere, a pirate crew is preparing to set sail. And you know that their flag is being folded right now, still warm from the iron, ready to fly. It makes you think about how legends are built, not just through battles and treasure, but through care, through rituals, through the hands that smooth out the wrinkles. So the message is clear when the time comes. Because when the flag rises and the wind catches it just right, no one sees the woman with the iron. No one sees the citrus rinse or the stitched charm. They just see fear, flying, perfectly pressed. You're back at sea now, the wind brisk and steady. Sails full and snapping like whips overhead. The crew is restless, too much calm, too much waiting. And the lookout finally calls down with a voice sharp as a cutlass. Ship to the east. Full sails, moving slow. The chase is on. You feel it in the pace of the crew, the suddenly purposeful way everyone moves. Ropes are pulled, sails adjusted. The gunner checks his powder. The lookout sharpens his spyglass lens on his sleeve. And then, without being told, someone heads below to fetch the flag. But this time, it's not the usual Jolly Roger. It's not even black. It's the Union Jack. And it's wrinkled on purpose. You blink. That's right. The flag is intentionally rumpled, folded roughly and tied at awkward points. It's a disguise, a lie, a calculated, pre-ironed deception. Because pirates didn't just use their flags to scare, they used them to manipulate. And sometimes, that meant flying the wrong flag altogether. This wasn't rare. Pirates were masters of disguise, and flags were their best costumes. They'd raise the banner of a friendly nation to get close to their prey, pretending to be merchants, traders, or even naval escorts. And once they were within striking distance, down came the lie, and up rose the Jolly Roger, ironed and ready, like the villain reveal in a perfectly timed play. Historians still argue over how often pirates used false flags, and whether this was considered fair, even in a world of lawless raiders. Some captains saw it as clever strategy. Others thought it was dishonorable trickery. But let's be honest, when your job is robbing ships on the high seas, honor is a flexible term. The key was in the execution. Literally. Maritime law treated false flags as a hanging offense if you attacked under them. The trick was to raise your real flag before firing the first shot. That way, you weren't technically breaking the rules, even if your intentions were as clear as a freshly pressed skeleton banner. You watch now as the decoy flag flutters overhead. Creased, faded, perfectly imperfect. It looks like it's been through a storm or two. Just enough to sell the story, a tired merchant ship limping along, no threat at all. The merchant vessel in the distance doesn't change course. You're close now. Close enough to see the crew on the other deck, moving slowly, unaware. Another few minutes, and it'll be time. You can already hear someone below stoking the fire for the iron. Not for warmth, not for comfort, but for the reveal. Because this is where the real magic happens. You move to the flag chest and pull out the real banner. It's still faintly warm from the last pressing, folded with care, edges sharp. You feel the weight of it, literal and symbolic. This is the moment everything changes. Here's the quirky bit: some pirate crews ironed their real flag during the approach, using the decoy flag as cover. They'd press it in secret, getting it ready for the dramatic switch. The smoother the reveal, the more terrifying the effect. 1 minute a wrinkled flag of peace, the next, a black canvas of doom, snapping to life like a thunderclap. And it worked. Sailors on the other ship would see the flag change and freeze. The psychological whiplash was brutal. They'd gone from, maybe we're safe, to, we're definitely doomed in a breath. And that hesitation, that's all a pirate needed. You glance over at the quartermaster, who's already unfolding the Jolly Roger. He nods to the iron, now hot and ready. With a practiced hand, he smooths the fabric, running the metal slowly along the skull's grin. The crossbones below, steam curls upward. The flag flattens. It's not just cloth anymore, it's a trap, perfectly set. Some scholars refer to this tactic as the switch, and it became a signature move for many pirate crews. You can almost hear the collective gasp from the enemy ship when the real flag goes up. It's not just fear, it's betrayal. They feel fooled, and that sting makes surrender come faster. Of course, it wasn't without risk. If your timing was off, if the real flag got tangled or stuck, the moment was lost. That's why pirates took care. They ironed, they folded, they practiced the hoist like actors rehearsing their cue. The drama had to land just right. You think of all the lies told by flags, all the ships that got close because they trusted the wrong cloth, all the crews that never saw the trick coming until it was too late. There's a story of a pirate ship that used 4 flags in a single approach. A French merchant flag to lure them in, a Dutch flag to confuse them, a torn Spanish flag to make them hesitate, and finally, the Jolly Roger, clean, sharp, fearsome. By the time it flew, the merchant crew was too dizzy with doubt to fight. You glance at the ironed flag now, ready to go. The captain steps forward, grabs the halyard, and with a flourish, the Union Jack is lowered. The real flag shoots up, and the effect is instant. The merchant ship freezes. You can almost hear the collective intake of breath from across the water. The black flag flaps proudly, perfectly. No creases, no folds, just death delivered with style. The crew cheers not loudly, just enough to feel the power of the moment. The merchant ship veers off course. You hear shouting. They're not preparing for battle, they're panicking. And you're grinning. Because you know what really won this moment. Not just the cannons or the speed, but the flag, the switch, the smooth reveal, the iron deception. It's funny, isn't it? That something as domestic as ironing could be a weapon of war. That the difference between surrender and resistance could come down to a well-timed press. But out here, on the high seas, everything is theatre. And the better your props, the better your chances. So next time someone tells you pirates were all chaos and blood, remind them they also knew how to fold a flag, heat an iron, and deliver a lie with terrifying precision. You're back on dry land now, walking through a narrow street in a coastal town that somehow manages to be both sleepy and suspicious at the same time. Every shuttered window feels like it's watching you. Every merchant seems to know more than they're saying. But you're not here for gossip or grog. You're here for something more elusive, a peek behind the curtain at the quiet industry that fed the pirate world its most iconic accessory. You're here to find the flag makers. It's easy to forget that every Jolly Roger started somewhere. Someone had to cut the cloth. Someone had to stitch the bones. Someone had to decide whether the skull should have teeth. And while pirate ships were known for their improvisation, many of their flags came from a network of clandestine craftspeople. People who made death look good and ironed it before it ever hit the wind. This part of the story, it's rarely told, but it's real. You duck into a low wooden shop. The sign above the door, just a faded silhouette of thread and needle. Inside, the air is thick with dust and dye. Rolls of canvas lean against the walls. Spools of thread are stacked like cannonballs. And at the center, hunched over a table, is a woman with a needle in one hand and a mug of something steaming in the other. She looks up without surprise. You'll hear about a flag. You nod, and she gestures to a chair. This is one of the guild, unofficial, of course, and long gone from any formal record. But in the 18th century there were people, mostly women, some men, who made it their trade to supply pirates with flags. Not openly, not with signs or receipts, but quietly, efficiently, and with an artist's touch. Historians still argue whether an actual flagmakers guild existed for pirates, or whether it was just a collection of independent artisans. Some believe there were networks, especially in pirate-friendly ports like Nassau or Tortuga, where word of mouth kept the business humming. Others think it was more chaotic. just a lucky few with skill and discretion offering their services to the right people. But the evidence is there. Flags with consistent stitching styles found across multiple ships, notes in journals referencing, going to the cloth lady, even a recovered ledger, now housed in a museum, listing fabric quantities and odd payments like 2 bottles dark rum, 1 Spanish dagger, balance settled in coin. Here's the kicker: many of these flag makers didn't just sew, they ironed. In fact, they considered it the final step, the setting of the flag. Just like a baker wouldn't send out a cake unfrosted, a pirate flag wasn't complete until it had been pressed flat, edges sharp, design crisp. Presentation mattered, and these artisans knew it better than anyone. You watch now as the woman unfolds a half-finished flag on the table. It's a variation on the classic, a white skull grinning atop crossed sabers. The lines are clean, the symmetry almost perfect. She runs her palm gently across it, then reaches for a small iron sitting in a stone cradle next to the fire. It's not the kind of iron you'd find in a naval laundry. This one's custom, smaller, designed for detail work. She presses it lightly along the sabers, smoothing out a fold that had crept in while stitching. Steam rises, the cloth flattens, the bones gleam. "You don't want wrinkles in your warning," she says simply. That's the motto of the guild, not written, but lived. These weren't just seamstresses. They were curators of fear, stylists for the sea's most notorious figures. And while they were rarely acknowledged in pirate lore, they played a crucial role. Some flag makers even developed signature touches, hidden stitches, color blends, reinforced hems. That made their work recognizable. If you knew what to look for, you could tell who made a flag just by the way it hung. And if you were a pirate with a reputation to protect, you wanted one of those flags. You wanted people to say, "That's a red Elsie skull," or "That hourglass is stitched like a widow's weave." Quirky tidbit: one famous flagmaker, known only as Sooty Belle, reportedly added a single strand of her own hair into every flag she made, a personal signature, a superstition, or maybe just a way to say, "I was here." And then, of course, came the final step, the press. Each flag was ironed before it left the shop, not just for looks but for transport. A freshly ironed flag could be folded tighter, packed smaller, and would be easier to ready once on board. Pirates didn't want to waste time steaming wrinkles out with a kettle. They wanted to unfurl and intimidate. Many of these artisans used custom ironing boards, flat stones or oiled wood, sometimes carved with grooves to let steam escape. They'd heat their irons over coals, test them on scrap cloth, and press each flag with care. Not too hot, not too fast. You scorch even one skull's grin, and suddenly you're out of business. You ask the woman how long she's been doing this. Long enough to know when a flag's going to see blood. She replies without looking up. You feel it in the cloth, in the heat. She finishes pressing the flag and folds it carefully, slipping it into a linen wrap. Somewhere, a pirate captain is waiting, maybe drinking, maybe sharpening a blade. And soon, he'll raise this very flag, ironed and ready, into a sky that doesn't care how many ships he's sunk. But someone will care. Someone on the other end of that flag will see it, crisp, smooth, unmistakable, and feel their stomach drop. Because this flag doesn't flutter like an accident. It declares itself. And that's what the guild gave pirates: not just flags, but presence. They turned cloth into charisma, wrinkles into warnings, and for a few coins, or a few favors, they helped build legends, one stitch, one press, one perfectly folded corner at a time. You leave the shop as quietly as you entered, back into the sun, back into the noise. But now, you see the flags fluttering above the ships in a different way. You wonder who made them, who ironed them, who added that little extra weight in the hem to keep it flying true. And you realize even the most fearsome pirate flag had a quiet beginning. In a room like this one, with a woman and an iron. The sky is bleeding into orange now, the sea touched with gold. You stand near the helm, one hand resting on the railing, the other gripping the folded flag. It's heavier today. Not in weight, but in meaning. Because this flag, the one you pressed yourself, folded with deliberate care. It's about to fly one last time. The captain's face is unreadable. His coat is buttoned, boots polished, hair tied back with a black ribbon that only comes out for moments like this. You know it too well now. This ritual, this rhythm. But today, there's something different in the air. A tension, a finality. You've seen battles before. You've seen the flag raised high and proud. You've seen merchant ships surrender at the mere flutter of its cloth. But this This feels like the last performance. The curtain call. The crew is quiet. No jokes, no songs. Just the sound of the sea slapping against the hull, and the occasional creak of rope. Everyone knows what's coming. You unwrap the flag slowly, your fingers brushing across the skull stitched at its center. The canvas is still smooth, still warm from the fire that pressed it just an hour ago. You think of all the hands that have touched this flag, the flag woman in port, the quartermaster who folded it with calloused precision, the captain who insisted on its perfection before every major raid. And now, it's your turn to raise it. You tie it to the halyard, glance once at the captain, he nods, and then you pull. The flag rises. It unfurls in a single, flawless motion, catching the wind and snapping into place like it knows this is its moment. The skull stares down, grinning madly as if it too understands what's at stake. Ahead, the enemy ship waits. Not a merchant this time. Not a helpless trader weighed down with spices and silver. No, this one has cannons, a navy vessel. Clean, disciplined, and staring directly at you. This isn't a bluff. This isn't theater. This is war. The captain draws his sword, not for show, but because he'll need it. He looks up at the flag and gives a small smile. She's flying proud, he says. And then, more quietly, good work. There's something about seeing that flag in its perfect form, fluttering against the setting sun, that makes your chest ache a little. Not from fear, though there's some of that, but from pride. You made that flag fly like that. You helped shape the legend. Historians still argue whether pirates flew their flags in real battle or just during the opening scare. Some say they lowered them once the fight started, to avoid becoming an easy target. Others believe the bravest captains kept the flag flying until the very end, as a challenge, a statement, or maybe just stubbornness. Today, your captain's made his choice. The flag stays up. The ship draws closer. You can see the enemy crew now, lining the rails, loading guns. Their flag flaps without drama, a national banner that says, "We follow rules. We serve kings." Yours says something else. Yours says, "We choose defiance." You grip the rail tighter as the order is given. Ready the guns. The crew moves like a machine, each man and woman falling into place. There's no panic, just resolve. And overhead, the Jolly Roger flaps beautifully, smoothly. Like it's not just ready for battle, but demanding it. Here's a quirky tidbit: some pirate crews reportedly believed that a well-pressed flag could bring luck in battle. That the smoother it flew, the cleaner the victory. One old tale even claims a ship survived a direct hit because the enemy cannonball was blinded by the shine on the flag. Obviously nonsense, but the kind pirates like to tell over rum and bruises. And in moments like this, maybe you believe it just a little. The cannon fire begins. The first shots miss, plumes of water rising like sea ghosts. You duck instinctively, then rise again, eyes on the flag. It's still there, still flying, still perfect. Smoke begins to curl around the decks. The sky darkens from powder and ash. The enemy ship is closer now, too close. But still, the flag holds. It flutters defiantly, refusing to bow, even as splinters fly and sails tear. And the captain, he's laughing now. Not a mad laugh, but the kind that comes when you know you've lived by your own rules, and you're proud of every single one. Even this. Especially this. You help reload the guns. You keep glancing at the mast. You know what that flag means to the crew. To you, it's not just a warning anymore, not just a scare tactic. It's a symbol of loyalty, of freedom, of a life chosen, not given. And just when you think the mast might fall, when the sails are half shredded and the deck is slick with sweat and gunpowder, a gust of wind catches the flag once more. It snaps out in full, the skull grinning like it knows the end is near and doesn't care. You feel your heart hammering, not from fear, from fury, from pride, from knowing that if you go down flying something you helped make. Historians don't agree on the final fates of most pirate flags. Some say they were buried with their captains. Others were taken as trophies, hung in naval offices or stuffed in chests. But some, they say, were never found. Lost to the sea, carried off in storms. Or burned with the ships they belonged to, rising into the sky as smoke and ash, symbols until the very end. This flag, you have a feeling it won't be taken. If the ship goes down, it'll go with it. Torn maybe, scorched definitely, but never surrendered. And that's the point, isn't it? Not survival, not victory. Defiance. The last shot rings out, the sea is quiet again. And up above, battered but still flying, the flag waves one final time. Not as a threat, but as a farewell. You wake to silence. Smoke still hangs in the air like a ghost that won't leave. The ship is barely afloat, creaking with every gentle rise of the water below. Around you, the deck is a mess of splintered wood, torn lines, and scorched sails. The crew, what's left of it, moves slowly. No shouting, no singing, just quiet recovery, like a theatre after the final curtain falls. You're not sure how long you've been out. Minutes, maybe hours. The sun is high now, and the sky is too bright for what just happened. You sit up, ribs aching, and the first thing your eyes look for isn't the captain, or the mast, or the enemy ship. Long gone now, retreating or sinking. You're not sure. You look for the flag, and there it is. Barely. It hangs from the mast, half torn, the bottom edge missing, blackened in places. But the skull is still there, faded, yes, but unmistakable. The cloth flutters weakly, as if exhausted from the fight. You stand, wobble slightly, and make your way toward it. No one speaks as you climb up to the base of the mast. You reach up, hands trembling, and untie what's left of the halyard. The cloth comes down slowly, its weight different now, heavier. You run your fingers along the edge where the fabric has burned away. You half expect it to crumble in your hands, but it doesn't. It holds. This flag survived. You find a flat space on the deck and lay it out. It's wrinkled now, torn, a shadow of what it was. But in that moment, it feels more powerful than ever. Because it wasn't just a symbol, it was the symbol. Through it all, it stayed up. It told the story when there were no words left, and now, it's telling one more. You retrieve a cloth and gently press the edge, almost out of habit. The iron is gone, of course, lost in the fight, probably at the bottom of the sea. But your hand moves like it remembers. You smooth the edge, fold it once, then again. The ritual still matters. Historians still argue whether any pirate flags made it through their final battles. Some say they were burned before capture. Others believe they were hidden, passed down, or buried in secret. A few have surfaced, fragments mostly, and collectors argue over their authenticity like relics of saints. But you know this one is real, you lived it. And now, it's yours to carry. The captain is gone. The ship is barely seaworthy. The crew is already talking about splitting the survivors, heading for separate ports, laying low. Maybe piracy's time has passed. Maybe the golden age is over. But the legend, the symbol, it lives. You wrap the flag carefully and tuck it into a satchel. You don't know where you'll go next. Maybe a quiet island, maybe a new ship. But wherever it is, the flag will go too. Pressed, folded, and ready. Not for terror, not for war, for memory. Because it's more than a threat now. It's a story, a legacy, a whispered reminder that once, on the high seas, there were rebels who flew death like a banner, and did it with style. Here's a quirky final detail. There's a rumor that one pirate crew, long after the age of sail had ended, passed their flag down through generations. Each keeper pressed it once a year with an heirloom iron, even though it would never fly again. Just to keep the symbol sharp, to honor the ritual. You believe it. Because as you step onto the dinghy, pushing off from the ruined ship, you feel the weight of the flag not as a burden, but as a promise. One last press, one last fold, and the legend continues.